Well, good morning, Matt. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Great to be here, Paul. Thank you.
You are the president owner of JD Machine. You and I have known each other for quite a number of years, and I've been kind of begging you to be on the show for a while now. Thank you for finally saying yes. I know you have a
Oh,
lot
it's
of
an
wisdom
honor.
to impart to the industry. So let's start. For those that don't know you or JD Machine, why don't you give us a bit of the background here?
Sure, you bet. Yeah, so JD Machine is in Ogden, Utah. I was born here, and
So
my
was I.
father, you were born in Ogden?
Yes, I
Oh,
don't know if you
awesome.
remember that. Yes, I was
Yeah,
born in Ogden.
yeah, it's not a bad place to be from.
Yeah.
JD Machine is a family business. My father started it in 1979. His initials are JD, and so that's where the
Hmm.
name comes from. And just a real quick background on his introduction into the industry. After the Korean War, he came home and married my mother. Well, he married her a little bit before he entered the army, but
Hmm.
they moved back to Ogden, and he couldn't find a job. Didn't
Oh
really
wow.
have any skills, and a family friend hired him in the Ogden Iron Works. They did a lot of work for the sugar beet industry that was here in Utah. And he took really well to the trade and worked his way up in that organization, and then was quickly hired by an expanding missile manufacturer in the 50s. And he started out pulling chips in their shop and worked his way up to be a foreman.
Wow.
In 71, they were moving their operations to Southern California to Van Nuys. So they
Mm.
talked my parents into moving down to the San Fernando Valley, where we lived for 8 years. And not very long after we moved, he was laid off and
Oh
bounced
no.
around to job shops. In 79, my parents were anxious to get back to family in Utah, and he was in a partnership that wasn't going very well, so he was able to get out of that with a little bit of money. And I can
Mhm.
remember stopping before we even drove to our new home to see if he could get a job at Parker Hannifin here in Ogden. And he was over 50, couldn't find a job, so he decided to buy a mill and a lathe and set up shop. So we were truly a mom and pop shop. And
Yeah.
I have pictures of my mother running machines, and I was 11 years old, um, working
Amazing.
summers. And he kept it small for the first 10 years or so, which was great. He was a great machinist. He was profitable. He had one customer that he took good care of, and they took good care of him.
Hmm.
And I came into the business. I worked there throughout all my summers growing up, high school. I did work study, and his programmer moved. He had a guy that programmed his one CNC machine. He moved to England, so I became the
Mm.
programmer in about 85.
At
And
what age were you then?
I was about 17, 18.
Okay. Yeah.
And fortunately, he had this customer that was very loyal, so there wasn't a lot of programming, a few new parts.
Hmm.
In 87, I left to serve a church mission in Taiwan for 2 years. And when I came back, it was like leaving one day and coming back the next day.
Oh, really?
Not a thing had changed. It was
Oh,
it
wow.
was really amazing looking back now. But I mean, he made a profit and set up a
Hmm.
retirement for himself, in my opinion, did the hard part of getting the business off the ground to get it going. When I came home and started out in college, I was in engineering, and my dad said, "Hey, you know what? I want to go travel." And uh, he basically said, "I think you need to do some more with the business. I'm not ready to do that, but why don't you?" So I hired a couple of friends, my high school buddies,
Oh,
and we
nice.
were going to engineering school
Hmm.
and working, and we'd grown a little bit, and decided that, hey, we ought to add some more equipment. So I bought my first Morisiki SL15 CNC lathe, and Chris,
Okay.
who's across the hall from me today,
Oh, wow.
he's our chief process officer. He programmed that machine, and we added aerospace to it. And I took over ownership in about 92. I looked at our
Okay.
tax returns. We had under $500,000 in revenue that day or that year, that fiscal year.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so just little by little, we worked our tails off. Darren and Chris, my high school buddies, finished up with manufacturing engineering degrees. I got through most of the classes that pertained to what I was doing at work and got into statics and thought, I don't know that I'm going to use this. So I changed majors and went into a business degree and got a great education and tried a lot of stuff out on the company as we were going. And just little by little, we've grown. We now have about 200 team members here, creeping up on about 60 million in revenue and doing business in just a lot of different industries. So it's kind of the American dream. It really is.
Yeah.
And my children are involved in the business and doing very well. And we're trying to groom the next generation for, what they want to do with the business. But I attribute a lot to my dad for being very willing to hand off the decision making, the control. He had more trust in me than he really should have had, and very supportive all the way through. And the deal was, I would take over the business and own the business. And I have 4 older sisters, and we worked out an arrangement there such that I could continue to reinvest in the business, but still take care of my sisters. And then, the risk was really mine to take in growing the business. So he was great. He part of the deal was that he would be able to still come to work and be involved in the business, or at least have a place to go. That was best for he and my mom. So he passed away at 90 years old in March of 2020. And up until probably 6 months before his passing, we had an Uber driver that would pick him up at assisted living and bring him in, and he be in the office for a couple of hours. And so his legacy is really felt here in our company. And I have pictures of him with my kids out on, just on machines. It's family businesses can be really a powerful business model if done right. It can be great. So,
what a very special story! Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's I bet he had such immense pride, coming and watching the company grow after you took it over to what it is today. That's pretty unique.
I didn't understand it very well until I can see my kids, and I can walk out right now. And my youngest son, who graduated from business school last year, got promoted to entry-level machinist. And I can go out and talk to him, and he shares with me what he's doing. And I understand my dad a little better now. So it's a great thing. The business gets in your blood, and I don't know if it's genetic or acquired, but it's really gratifying to see, just what a company in manufacturing does today to affect lives of individuals and families, the community, and I feel like we're of vital importance to our country, our national defense, the economic impact of small family-owned businesses is, I don't think you can put a value on it.
Yeah, I mean, the 200 families that you feed there in Ogden, right? That's a significant impact to that community.
It's pretty intimidating going to our Christmas party and looking out and seeing. We reminisce on when my dad owned the company, and we fit in a corner booth at Sizzler Steakhouse, and to see the change. It's a heavy responsibility, but I've got a lot of great people that share the load.
Wow. Yeah. We got our shop up to about 75, but I certainly felt that burden of 75 mouths to feed as the person responsible for sales, right? It's like, this is a significant responsibility. So to maybe frame the next question, I've interviewed many owners that have had legacy family businesses. As you know, I think you've said you've listened to every episode. Thank you so much. I never expected someone of a company of your size would listen to the show. So
I've learned so much, Paul. And, I think those of us who do listen to the podcast and learn from you, you're doing an incredible service to the industry. And personally, I appreciate all those that have been on before and shared what they've shared. I've learned a lot. There's some incredible people out there that are in this industry. So
Yeah.
we're stronger together, that's for sure. So thanks for what you do.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. So, so my point in bringing that up is, there's been lots of family businesses, but very few, if none, I think that I can recall, have gotten to the size that, that JD Machine has gotten to. So I'd love to have you share, what you think has made the difference over all those years to get to the scale that your company has gotten to, and maybe the best practices, the things you feel like you've done right, the mistakes you've made along the way. I know that's a really wide open-ended question.
That's a long answer to that question.
Yeah. Well, we have an hour or so.
You'll need more. No, I'd be happy to. I would love to go out and say, hey, we had a goal that in 2024 we'd be at this revenue level and this head count, and it really didn't happen that way. My goal was just to be, a great company. And I think there's something to be said for folks who have, outside experience that bring that to a company. Most of our growth has been from within, developing folks from the shipping dock. Our CFO started at age 21 at the shipping dock, and now he's an executive with all the education and experience and the personal attributes to make that to do a world-class job in that position. But I think there's a few things, and as I thought about this question that may come up, I thought, okay, so in this audience, talking to folks who may be new in their journey, and sometimes nightmare of owning a machine shop, what's the secrets? And there really isn't any. It's just a lot of hard work. And I've had people say, hey, how do I get to be your size? And I say, well, first you have to ask yourself, do you want to be? Because there's a price to be paid for that. And there's also folks that I know that, have set out to be a large company that have admitted to me that, hey, I wished I'd have been more content with where I am, where I was. And, if you want to be a big business and your passion really is on the business side of it, which I learned pretty quick that I wasn't the most talented person on the shop floor. But I know people that are that way. My friends, there's a fellow my dad hired at age 17 and almost 18 that's been here since 1980 that has mentored me and my children. He's a team leader for my youngest right now. He's a mechanical genius, and compared to him, I was horrible in the shop floor. But it's those folks that are very talented in making parts, like my dad, that might be happier keeping the company manageable on a smaller size. There's a book called Small Giants that I loved that really refutes the phrase of, if you're not growing, you're dying. I don't believe that for a second. I think you cannot be growing from a revenue or headcount standpoint and be making your business more profitable, more stable, just the best it can possibly be. And so that's an option for folks that are considering, what they want to do with their business. If they do want to grow and become a larger employer, it's a different, a different focus. And it's really from a business standpoint. I'm a believer that systems are critical for supporting growth. We've enjoyed growth with improvement in our quality and our on-time delivery. That's been a more recent thing. There were times that growth really tanked not only our quality and delivery, but profitability.
Absolutely.
Because as you know, the strain that's put on an organization when it grows, any weaknesses are just exacerbated. So I think that putting time and energy and effort into systems is absolutely critical, and doing that early on. I mean, there's been times that we thought, man, even with our ERP system, and just a plug, I love your system, Paul. I love your product, and I recommend that for people. Unfortunately, we're to almost a point of no return and changing,
Yeah,
just because of
totally good.
everything we have in ours, and the things that we've done to make it function at an extremely high level. But ERP something, if you're going to do it, absolutely do it right. Do not skimp on the implementation, and set up your processes to support good data in that ERP system. And I'm sure you preach this, but as
Oh
somebody
yeah.
who's lived it, as you have, but
Mm-hmm.
it's probably different coming from me than from you that owns the
Mm-hmm.
product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, if you go halfway with an ERP, it almost doesn't matter as much what you buy as far as the product goes. But like I said, I love ProShop,
Sure.
but the the effort that you put into the implementation and ensuring that you have the proper controls in place, the proper processes, so that you are setting up your quotes right, you are doing timekeeping correctly, you are, your transactions from issuing purchase orders to receiving the materials to putting it in inventory, all those things. That's one of the key things. We consider there's 4 key systems that we have that have enabled us to grow. Um,
Okay.
Probably first and foremost is the QMS, the quality management system. And that's something that, it does add some overhead to it. And if you're going to grow, it is a necessary thing because it enables you to maintain quality, and
Mm-hmm.
not just quality, but it's some good business. The other is ERP system, and
Mm-hmm.
doing that right will enable a company to grow and improve. Our production system, which is the way we track the um, the shop floor to ensure that we're uh, actually making product within the times that we bid it,
Yep.
and driving improvement and engaging our workforce, helping people know where they're at and whether they're winning or losing. And some folks think that's just heavy-handed Big Brother stuff, but in my experience, if you explain it to folks and tell them why you need them to clock in and out of a job and why they ought to be concerned if they're less than 100% productive, people respond to that. It's kind of like a video game. I mean, what would a video game would be without a score? And so,
Sure.
and as we rolled that out a number of years ago, I told them, I said, guys, we're not trying to micromanage you. What I want to do is create a good vehicle so we as management know what you need to do your job correctly. And
I love that
bringing
reframe.
resources to bear so that you don't have to be frustrated with tools breaking or, you know, scrapping parts or whatever. We're all trying to do the same thing. So, and once we demonstrated through our behaviors that, we're not going to, sit on their head and say, why didn't you make more parts? But we're going to constructively address what kept them from hitting the numbers and the quality.
Mm-hmm.
We had some credibility, and then other improvements were easier to make. And then lastly, though, another thing we consider to be a key system would be our training systems. And so we have a Department of Labor registered apprenticeship we've had since it was registered in '99, and it's just grown and changed. It's our own internal training, and having a pipeline of people isn't an easy thing to do, but that's really been a key and something I'd love to share with the industry, because I think we as an industry need to take ownership for the development of our workforce. It's not going to get done
Mm-hmm.
for us.
Mm-hmm.
We can complain about high schools not having shop class or
Right.
machining in their high schools. That's not going to change anything. We can complain that we have a PR issue. Lots of things we can complain about, but I'm pretty excited. I feel better about our workforce and our pipeline now than probably ever in my history.
Mm-hmm.
And it's come about because of intentional effort and consistent effort over a lot of years to put that in place. And I would love to have all the employers do that, because it's just going to be good for the industry. And
Mm-hmm.
there are some that are just doing an amazing job with that.
Yeah. Um, You said when we were prepping for this, you said that you put more of your marketing efforts into workforce than you do into sales for customers. Can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, in listening to a lot of your guests, I absolutely agree that there needs to be effort put into marketing and sales for customers, um, and especially being proactive. Our company, like many shops, have grown organically, and we do a
Hmm.
great job for a customer. Buyer leaves that company and goes to a new one, and hey, we got a new customer. A
You
lot of
bet.
our business has grown that way. A
Yeah.
few has come from targeted efforts to bring in work, but our biggest issue hasn't been finding work. It hasn't been getting capital or financing. Our ownership structure makes that not a great big issue. We can buy equipment as we need, facilities, but the big constraint to growth has been workforce. So
Hmm.
and I don't know, I enjoy it. I really love workforce development, and I've decided to put a fair amount of my time into giving back to the local tech colleges, to the high schools, and Utah's a great place to do business.
Hmm.
Our state government is really accessible, and they've been very supportive. So giving back's been pretty easy from that standpoint on the education side. But we try to brand the company in the community so that people know who we are. And as we talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, I've heard of that company because it's on the scoreboard at the high school football field.
Right.
And so when we go into the high school to talk to their STEM classes or their CTE classes, they may have some recognition. So that's what I meant by that we'll
Mm-hmm.
contribute to sports teams. We try to give away swag and things like that that'll be worn around town. And Ogden's not a big town, but it's not a small town either. So
Yeah.
it's just the continued effort that way to put aside some of our budget to put towards community branding the company in the community.
Right. There's a, I you always see these local businesses that are putting their logos and supporting local high school teams, and I always figured that was to win customers, right? Local insurance company, local restaurant, whatever. But I can see the wisdom in branding to potential employees because as I think they say in sales, it takes 8 or 10 times for someone to even have an impression of your business before they'll even like notice or pay attention. And so yeah, there's the JD Machine logo. Since they've been in little league all the way up through high school, that's sort of in their consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's really wise. I love that.
It does help not
And
being in a huge area.
sure,
It's a little
absolutely.
easier to do that. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's two school districts here in our area, and so in fact, later today, I have one of the school district CTE coordinator that we've invited to come by, just so
Hmm.
that we could show him the shop. We could show
Hmm.
him the kind of employer. We always ask them to speak with some of our team members, our younger. In fact, we have some kids on the shop floor that are still in high school. People ask how we
Oh
do that.
wow.
Well, that talk speaks to last year in the Utah legislative session. Our industry was able to get a bill passed that would allow state risk management to cover the workers' comp for interns and apprentices inside of machining and other
Hmm.
similar, but it was the machining effort that got that bill passed. So
Right.
anyway, I'm going to have this person come in. I'm going to say, here's a high school kid. Why don't you go talk to him about, what his experience is, and with intention, it opens his eyes to some of the career pathways that are available to their students, and then we'll follow up with hey, can you set up a period where we might come in and just talk about manufacturing? And we always encourage kids to start a journey for a career early on. And when I speak to youth groups, I tell them, hey guys, um, it really doesn't matter what you go into, but don't waste time. Start now. if you think you want to be a veterinarian, go spend some time with a veterinarian. Talk to
Hmm.
your school, counselors, teachers, neighbors, friends. Give me a call. I know a couple of vets, and let's get
Hmm.
you in there to go spend a little time with them so that you can decide if the time and effort you're going to put into education is actually going to be something first you want to do, and secondly that
Hmm.
there's actually a job that can help pay for your time and effort and money put into that education.
Right.
Obviously, I'm biased towards machining because we have a number of people on our shop floor that have 4-year degrees and the accompanying student debt,
Hmm.
and they're not using that at all. And how much further ahead, well, I would feel, and they've told me, I wish I'd
Right.
have known about this in high school because I would have taken that time, money, effort, all that stuff, put it into my craft, and
Hmm.
I wouldn't have the debt, I wouldn't have lost the time, and I would have a career that I now love without any wasted time. So we try to send that message to the high school kids and promote manufacturing, but also promote career exploration before just saying, I'm going to go to college and figure out what I'm going to do.
Hmm. Hmm. That's great. Yeah, last week or the week before, I gave a talk at a local aerospace conference, and it was on workforce. It was, well, basically on getting more with less in terms of labor and workforce, and I did focus the first part of it on recruiting, and clearly you guys have done a fantastic job with that, and that's a long-term investment, right? That's not something you do overnight. You planted
Right.
those seeds decades ago. Um, but then the next thing is once you get someone to, get their interest to come in the door and meet and interview, you're going to hook them with your culture, right? And so I'd love to have you speak to, what makes JD a great company from that perspective, and why you have employees that have been there 40 plus years, and young people that are loving it, and clearly that's working. So, yeah, can you share what you've done there?
Yeah, and there's no secret. Honestly, it requires a high degree of trust from the people on the floor to the management and vice versa. Now, in reality, we're all going to complain about each other. There's always going to be, the guys in the office, they don't understand what we're dealing with, and the office folks are going to, it's the human nature. But at the end of the day, I think I would hope at JD Machine that, when I walk around the shop floor, which I try to do on a daily basis and speak with people, that they know they can talk to me. When I have a new team member come in, we do an orientation, I speak with them. I talk to them about our goals as a company. I talk to them in depth about our core values. I give them my business card and say, hey, my cell phone number's on here. If I can help you with something, give me a call. And I said, I got to
Mm,
honor the chain of command, and we're pretty
yeah.
flat. I mean, as far as an organization goes, it's myself, our COO. We now have a production manager who is my oldest son. I
Hmm.
didn't put him in that spot, by the way. And then the working team leads. And I says, but if I can help you with something, and I spoke with a team member last night on the phone, he was home about a more of a personal issue. And, I think there's more to it than just getting work out of these folks. We're trying to,
Hmm.
one of our, in our mission statement is to improve the lives of the JD team. And, we try to put our money and our efforts, to support that. And so, culture, again, it's so much trust when we try to roll out things like, okay, guys, we want you to be extremely accurate in your timekeeping because we want to know what you've done with the time while you're on the clock.
Hmm.
Well, you can just say you're going to go do this, but what we did is we brought them in small groups and explained to them, because these are important people and they deserve to understand what we're doing. And so we
Hmm.
spend a fair amount of time, and not always successfully, but we sure try to inform people and be open about what's going on in the company and why we're doing certain things. And we've been through
Hmm.
enough ups and downs in the economy, and I'm a big fan of job shops because I think we trade sanity for stability. And by that I mean,
Hmm.
it's pretty crazy managing different customers in different industries, and it's hard to do.
Yeah.
But by doing that, and after 9/11, it was rough because we had two customers, and I had the company, and I had personally guaranteed loans, and it was dark. It was really tough days. And after that, I learned the value of diversification. And through that, it creates a lot of chaos, but it creates stability. So we really try to promote, those types of things and educate and try to make it palatable so that, a person on the machine on the floor, I mean, they're not really concerned about our key financial ratios, which our management team tracks, but they want to know, what does running this job in time and keeping strapped to the bare minimum, how does that translate into my profit sharing? How does that translate into wage growth, company reinvestment into technology, and long-term stability for my career? And those are the things that, they resonate with the folks. So we're constantly trying to make those connections and just dignify the people. And I know from your past episodes, you ask about core values, and our core values, and this is something that I picked up from Michael Tomasi. He's a good friend of mine, and you had him on the show not terribly long ago.
Such a good episode.
And his core values are get it. And so I'm not sure if I've ever had an original thought in my mind, but I'm pretty good at R&D, rip off and duplicate.
Yep.
And so I asked Michael about it, and he says, this is great. And Michael he is a giant in the industry, and he lives all of these things. And I'm also a big fan of networking and sharing best practices with people that I trust. And I met Michael through the NTMA, and I know you've promoted that trade association, and it's been vital to our success as a company for sure. But our core values are, the acronym is THRIVE: team focused and loyal, hardworking and tenacious, respect for everyone, integrity in all that we do, value, contributing daily, and education for life. And the one that I have to explain a little bit is value. And I tell, especially our new team members, I talk to them, I says, guys, I can pay you a lot of money. And there are people here who make a lot of money, but it's always a situation where they are generating more than they take. And I can afford to pay you a lot as long as what you contribute is more than that. If those get flip-flopped, then there's going to be a day of reckoning. And I don't want to put you or me in that position. So let's figure out a way through education, through hard work, through being team focused. Your honesty is a non-negotiable, but if you exhibit those core values, we're going to have a great time together, and hopefully a long, fruitful relationship. And it'll be more than just a work relationship. Brock Smith that I mentioned that my dad hired, he was a pallbearer at my dad's funeral, and we consider him family. And so, it is a business, and we have to run it like a business. We're here, and I tell the new team members, I said, I can't promise you're going to love every day, that this is going to be tons of fun. If that were the case, you'd have to pay me to come here. But because, we have to work hard, there's days of frustration, challenge, disappointment, failure. I'm more than happy to pay you as long as we can make sure that you're able to be in a position where you continue to add value, and we want you to be able to support family and, just have a great life. So that's, I don't know if that speaks to your original question on culture, but that's kind of our philosophy. And, the stamp of my dad is there, and hopefully our family is supporting that through our behaviors and actions, and not just my biological family, but our management team. I don't know how many combined years we have working here, but it's a lot. And we're preparing for, I can't believe I'm now 55, and that guy that's, not the youngest person in the room, which I felt that for a number of years, but looking towards the future, and just how do we keep this thing going past me?
Well, I know there are thousands of people out there with notepads furiously writing down what you just said. That was really eloquently said. And just the clarity of, I can pay you really well as long as, you're making the company more, and just, the trust, the honesty, that's just all such rich stuff. I want to come back to your comment of after 9/11. That was the darkest period in our shop. And, you know, personal guarantees on all sorts of equipment. And, you know, we had just moved into a building 5 times bigger at a much more expensive lease. And, you know, did our first layoffs and only layoffs ever, you know, during that period. But what went through your mind? I mean, besides this is really hard.
Oh goodness. It was, man, what a crucible. And, you know, Paul, I think that folks have to go through that experience to really earn their stripes in this business. It really worries me if there aren't, if a company hasn't gone through a very difficult time. And, you know, as I get together and, you know, we got a kind of an informal group with Michael and some others that, you know, we talk about those things. And, you know, there's just things you learn through that are priceless. But wow, yeah, we were liquidating personal assets. We did everything we could, and probably should have had a layoff or quicker. And that was a lesson. And fortunately, like you, we really haven't experienced a layoff since then. You know, protecting the company is really critical, and you've got to make sure that, you know, the company can stay viable. And it just kept getting worse and worse. We were in automotive and doing airbag components. Airbags started here in Ogden. And when they were required in the 90s in cars, it just exploded. And I had a customer that said, hey, you know, you've done a great job as a prototype shop. We want you to be a production shop. Go out and buy, you know, production related Swiss machines and, you know, multi-turreted lathes and all that stuff to build these products in the millions. We did that, and they called me as soon as I had a new building, and it wasn't even finished. I was standing in the dirt, and a semi rolled up with one of the first of our 4-star screw machines. And they said, we're going to start our own shop and we're not going to need suppliers. Can you send that machine back? And I says, I've got a contract here. And they says, yeah, but you know, there's fine print that says we'll only guarantee 2 weeks of finished goods and 6 weeks of raw materials. Fortunately, we continued on with them for a period of time, but it just wasn't a profitable deal. And the other part of our business, the bigger part, was in commercial aircraft. And we all know what happened after 9/11. And so I had a fair bit of debt with the equipment. I had a new building and felt like we were doing pretty good. And we were just, I mean, that right before that's kind of when we started our lean journey and looking at, you know, just all of the great practices of lean. And we put them in place with a healthy dose of common sense. And felt like we were improving, and we just improved and improved and improved. And, but we get the financials every month and look at them, and it was not good news. And the cash was dwindling. And I can remember we were just about maxed out on our credit line. And, you know, I'm not sure all your audience would you know, how they would feel, but I really felt there's been a lot of divine intervention that we've received, as a lot of my friends recognize too, and throughout the country. But we had a new customer come in and they were in the up armoring of vehicles for the war. And that was really our saving grace and helped us turn the corner. But it was to a point where we were weeks away from liquidation, and I didn't know what to do. A lot of time on my knees, and my wife was a trooper and had great confidence, and my dad didn't. You know, he was out of the business completely at that point, and but still here, so he would advise me, but really couldn't do more than that. And his experience was more in machining than it was in business, so it was really filling things out and just trying to unite as a management team. There was I mean, I don't know how big our company was then, probably 20 or 30 people, probably around 25. And so we just had to pull together, and I was open about what we needed to do, and we just eked through it. And then turns out that all the improving that we had to do during that period was, I mean, that was really the basis for the business that we have today. So it was, in hindsight, extremely valuable. in the middle of it, I just, man, that was tough. So I tried to share that with my company and especially my family. Just
Mm-hmm.
maybe they don't have to go through that, but I'd love for them to learn from what we learned is you got to keep your feet on the ground. Don't over leverage yourself. You can grow too fast. No
Right.
question about it. It
Yeah.
outstrips your own ability to manage a company. It outstrips your systems. Cash flow obviously is
Mm-hmm.
usually what's
Yep.
first apparent when you've gone too far too fast.
Yeah. 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 That's a powerful story. We were also weeks away from insolvency, and we actually found an advisor at the local college through the Small Business Development Center program, and his name was Tom Dorr, and I credit him with helping save the company. I don't think we would have made it if it wasn't for his guidance and help, because we were, and probably like you said, you moved switched to business school, but they don't teach you in business school the lessons that you had to learn going through that much of a downturn, and we thought we were great business people, because when we started in '97 through all the way to 2001, times were good and the economy was strong, and we were like, wow, look at us. And little did we
This
know
isn't
that
that hard.
yeah, exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
um, so let's talk a little bit about lean.
Yeah.
That hasn't come up in our conversations before, but clearly that's been a real foundational thing for you,
Oh, yeah.
as it was for our shop too. So
Hmm.
yeah, how did you lean? How did you learn about it? How did you get employee buy-in? How did you run the process or different processes?
Yeah. So initially it was a supplier development effort from that one aerospace customer that we had, and we still have
Mm-hmm.
them, and they're still a good customer. And they've always been pretty forward thinking, and they had some people go to the Shingijutsu Institute and become trained in the Toyota production system. And they said, guess what? We're coming to see you and we're going to make you lean. And I said, well, I probably could stand to lose a few pounds, but what do you mean? And so we had a week long Kaizen event, and we took all of our, we had 2-axis lathes on one side of the business and 3-axis mills on the other. And this was in about 96. And we put them into value streams and started single piece flow. And wow, man, if we didn't see improvement in quality, and they said, cut your lot sizes and put in 5S and let's get TPM going and just all these great tools.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't quite circle around to this, but yeah, I've always felt like I had a monkey on my back because I've never worked anywhere else. And so,
Mm-hmm.
really trying to see what's out there in that big world and what people learn when they're working in different companies. And
Yeah.
really, we've really tried to be proactive with that type of stuff. And so by the end of the week, we moved all of our machines into value streams, and we cut our lot size. We've done all the classical lean things and tried to implement takt time. And um, there was some real benefit, but there was some real problems because you can't cut lot sizes without reducing setup time. And that didn't quite work. So we learned that the lean tools are fundamentally awesome, but you also have to put in a healthy dose of common sense and take a natural progression.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, we've really tried to instill a culture of continuous improvement in whatever form it needs to take.
Yeah.
But we want to understand where we have issues, where we have quality issues, where productivity issues, where we have equipment downtime issues, whatever that issue may be, producing a way for that to escalate and bubble up so that it gets attention and then put in the proper tool to fix that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's where it's come from. And we found, that many times the tools of lean are the right application. We're struggling with setup time, but lo and behold, that machinist is having to leave their workstation to go find a wrench. Makes me crazy. So when we talk about 5S, and I still go out, and every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, our horizontal mill cell has some time set aside for 5S. I'll put my smock on, not every week, but I try to get out
Mm-hmm.
there regularly, and we work on 5S for half an hour. And so Um, and as we're doing it, it's like, hey guys, I know you think sweeping the floor is 5S, but let me tell you why we're doing this. I want you to not have that mental frustration of saying, dang, someone stole my Allen wrench and I've got to go find one and steal it from somebody else so they don't have it when they need it. So let's set your workspace up so that you have everything you need right here at your fingertips, and you can be not only more productive but less frustrated. So it's really been that kind of an application. So we look at when we're talking about implementing automation. All right, so what's the underlying principle here? Well, we need to keep that spindle going. So this really is SMID. And that's, we look at it through that lens and say, all right, what is our customer paying for as far as value? And how do we eliminate everything else that's in that line? And also, how do we engage our team, every team member, so that we can get the genius that they have spread throughout the company? And so way back, we implemented a system, and many companies call them Kaizen ideas. We just call them improvement ideas. And early on, I came up with it, and it's a quarter-size sheet of paper, and it says, what's the problem, what's the solution, and who's going to do it? And I was mentored by a good friend who says, if you respond to those ideas, they will keep coming, and people will recognize that that's a communication tool, and you're taking away, things that are frustrating to them. And so they started coming, and early on, I'd take them, I'd enter them into an action register, and I tell people, hey, these will not come off until we deal with it. And after every one was submitted, I would go out and talk with that person and say, hey, got your idea. Thank you for the idea. Here's the plan. And if there was a reason why we couldn't do it, which we tried to find reasons to implement those, but if there's a reason we couldn't do it, I'd explain to them. And this is why. And, I love the idea. And sometimes that would spur some other discussions and come out with something really cool. He's now our engineering manager. Way back, he put one in that says the Twix bars in the candy machine are too old. And so I got that, and we met, and we had 3 or 4 people on our committee that would review them and work to implement them. So we called the vendor and said, hey man, can you take the quantity of Twix bars in the candy machine down to 3 so they rotate quicker? And they said, yeah, I can do that. And so I went back to Scott and I said, hey man, we took care of this, and this is what's going on. He kind of had a smirk. I said, Scott, were you testing me? And he says, yeah, I was. And I says, okay, well, this is what's done. Obviously he had a complaint, whether it was material to the business or not. It's a different conversation, but it wasn't like 2 or 3 weeks later that we got another idea from Scott that I think we're still reaping the benefits from. It was a systemic quality change. And he had that in his head. I don't know, we might have found it without that, but it got implemented. So that was, our experience. And now our goal right now, I think it's 1,800 improvement ideas per year. We have a goal for it, and we track it. And it's got way more advanced. It's all electronic now, and it automatically sends out the assignment to maintenance or to purchasing or the team. We encourage the teams to take care of them themselves. And it really is a process that we've been able to drive improvement through Lean and through engagement. And there's a book, another book I'd recommend. It's 2-Second Lean by Paul Akers, and it's a great book on really just breaking Lean down into common sense and palatable, digestible stuff. So we give that book to all of our people and ask them to read it, and many have, and you can tell.
Yeah. Speaking of small worlds, I was born in Ogden like you, and Paul Akers lives right here in Bellingham, where I live. So Fast Cap is right here in Bellingham, and I remember visiting before they moved his old shop and his new shop, and he came to Pro CNC years back, and Lean, like you said, Lean was a transformational process for us. We also did thousands of Kaizen newspaper tickets, we called them, and we had like 4 or 5 teams active all the time. People would rotate in and out of the action teams, and we would celebrate and encourage the suggestions, and we took them seriously like you did. And yeah, you get that embedded into every employee, that they know the wastes, they're looking for the wastes, they are not satisfied if they're doing the wastes. And that's a powerful shift, So yeah, I could see clearly you describing the way that you've done that over the years. Has got to be just a super powerful lever for success.
Well, and you alluded to it there, Paul, where you talk about knowing the wastes. We added a waste. We call them the 9 deadly wastes, and we actually have we call them managers' daily standard works. And so these little cards that our management team has to grab one every day and go out to the shop floor and talk with a team member about what's on there, just so that we're engaging with the people on the floor. And one of them, there's one for 5S, and that's usually where I'll, get a little evangelical about 5S, but there's one, the deadly wastes. And it's a little bit like core value statements. It sounds a little cheesy, and I actually tell people our core values are a little cheesy, but this is why we do it. It's a common vocabulary that we can use so that we know, what we should be doing. It drives us a little bit towards true north. And those deadly wastes are kind of the same thing. When people understand motion, when they understand inventory and quality, all those wastes, then they start to be able to see them. So when I get a card that has the deadly waste on it, I'll go out and I'll say, okay, here's the deadly waste. Do you know what they are? And some of them have them memorized, but if not, I don't we go through them, and I said, let's find some here, right here when we're looking around. And one day I was talking with Tony, who works in our assembly area, and he says, well, we got all these parts stacked up, and we're installing helicoils, and then we're going to put them in and piece mark them. He says, that seems like there's some waste there because we're driving up inventory from a whip standpoint. Plus we got more motion. He says, what if we took this stamp pad, set it right next to the helicoil inserting tool, and just combine those two? I'm like,
I love it.
I love you, man. Tony's awesome. So anyway, that's really fun. I enjoy that kind of stuff probably more than anything in business. Is just seeing people, have some big wins and make the company better.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. I knew it's taken a while to get you on the show, but I knew you were going to have a ton to share, and you certainly are delivering. Thank you very much. This is a ton of fun.
It's been fun.
You had mentioned in our prep that you only have 2 main KPIs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So a number of years ago, we got formal with our strategic planning, and we went through a pretty big exercise, and we came up with 4 high-level goals that were a distillation of our mission statement of strengthening our customers, strengthening our company, strengthening the community, and strengthening our team. And as I mentioned, I served at a church mission in Taiwan and learned Mandarin Chinese, and we had a little campaign that says, hey, we want to put something behind this drive. How can we get a mantra or something for this strengthen thing? And somebody said, well, what's a Chinese character for that? So we got the Chinese character, and it's kind of throughout our shop. And beneath that, we started putting in all these goals, just things that we could measure, because through our ERP integration and customizations to report, now we're using a lot of data analytics to slice and dice data. It's almost like we've gone from all of these goals and then supporting activities and action registers and meetings, and burn that down to 2 things. And I learned a concept a long time ago: the near and far side of complexity lies simplicity. And it's like a bell curve and distribution, that when you're early on and you don't know what you don't know, things are pretty simple. But then you got to go up this slope of the curve and pay the price of understanding the complexity of everything. And you come down the other side, and it starts getting simpler, but depending on what you're doing. And then I would suggest that in this business, that bell curve is probably bigger than anything else that I know, just because of the complexity of what we deal with as an industry,
Yeah.
the myriad of things that can go wrong and do go wrong.
Yeah.
It's amazing to do anything right. But then you get to that other side and it's simple again, because, you really understand what's important. So that's a long answer to a short question, but our goals are on-time delivery and gross profit margin. And everything we do should support those two things. Certainly customer quality goes south really fast and it shows up very quickly in on-time delivery. It also shows up in customer quality. Fortunately, our quality management system is pretty, it's extremely mature, and knock on wood, quality isn't where we need to focus right now. Our main challenge is on-time delivery. And the bigger you get, the more complex, as you probably know better than I do, Paul, scheduling a shop is incredibly difficult. And so many things have to go right to manage a capacity plan and develop a schedule to support on-time delivery. So that's really our burning platform right now as a management team. We've decided on that. We've done fine for years, but we want to be world-class as far as on-time delivery goes. And then the other side of it is we have to be profitable. So we're monitoring our gross profit margin, because that's going to incorporate both revenue and the cost of building our product. And that drives kind of a singular focus, or two focuses, for our team to put our energies and direct improvement ideas and direct departmental goals and strategies. And we've found that from those two, the on-time delivery is first thing you got to have in place is a decent plan, and that's your capacity plan and scheduling your work centers. And then for gross profit margin, the other thing that kind of is a little bit independent is a purchasing variance of purchase materials and processing, and the purchase stuff that goes into building your parts. But the shared one is really, and we brought this back around, is OEE. So we're tracking OEE very carefully, because we were watching productivity and throughput very carefully, but it kind of left out the issues that impact your schedule when maybe a machine goes down. So now it's really going to bubble up when your maintenance isn't quite where it needs to be, or you've got some failure or a crash, heaven forbid, or whatever, and then staffing. So we're pretty excited about that. A lot of this stuff is way more difficult than just talking about, but it's kind of been where we as a company, every company is a little bit different, because your needs and your culture and your customers and all those things come into play. But for us, those are the things that we really, really want to work on, and we don't spend a lot of time gathering data, because we have the stuff in place. But now we can take that, pull it out of wherever we're integrating machine monitoring directly into our data analytics, and again, it gets simple, but there's a lot of complexity to it. So
yeah, it gets simple, but it's by no means easy, right? So,
you got to like a challenge to be in this business. Yeah,
no doubt. That's a true statement. So when you're looking at that gross margin, that can unpack a ton of different potential problems, right? You're spending more on materials or processing than you quoted, or the labor time is more than you quoted, or machine time. So I imagine sounds like pretty mature systems to really dive into that and then come up with the most important improvement activities or things you need to go do for a particular part number or system wide. Is that how that works?
And that's kind of goes back to my original point of, getting good data into your ERP system so you can get it out. And that's been an evolution that honestly for us took decades to get to where that data was trustworthy, where you really could look at it and make informed decisions without lots and lots of exceptions having to be factored in. And so that's the hardest part. I mean, acting on the data isn't a big deal. well, it is, but getting the data
Sure.
that you can utilize has been our challenge as a company. So we've been probably the last 10 years with really good data. And then with the advent of, we started with Power BI, we've kind of moved to another service to provide our dashboards, but we've been able to manipulate the data, get into the tables of our ERP system, compare it with actual machine data, or a lot comes out of timekeeping. It also all has to revert right back to the quote because that's the standard. If you want to stay in business, you kind of have to execute the way you planned, which the plan typically is your quote. And so the quote gives us the baseline, the target, and then we just have to compare that with how things really went. We can do that right now. Every time, there's a transaction or a timekeeping event, a person puts in the number of parts they built, number of parts they scrapped, and then it does the calculations. And then also, when you write a purchase order or you receive an invoice, that's from a purchasing standpoint that'll give you the variances. So.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that brings it back to the lean, when something is not according to plan, back to the lean principles, right? Like, why did the setup take too long? Oh, because Mary had to go find a wrench and or the program wasn't right and they scrapped a bunch of parts, or the fixture was worn out, or and then just repeat all the getting rid of the wastes.
Well, and I would guess that most people listening, they have days when they think, man, does anything go right? And I've had lots of those days, and recently, thank heavens, there's fewer of them. And I would attribute a lot of that to really doing a good root cause corrective action. That's part of, the quality management systems, but we do, and typically we use the 5Y tool. It's quick, it's easy.
Just about to say, yeah.
Yeah, and then implementing that, we'll sometimes implement it. We got a few different ways to implement it, but we do 5 Ys for safety incidences. Fortunately, we have very few, but safety near misses. If there is a machine crash, and I'd love to say we don't have those, but it happens, especially with a younger workforce. And we've been able to put some things in place to dramatically reduce those. When there's a significant scrap that doesn't make it to the customer, obviously, if there's a customer return, that's mandatory. And even if our customers don't want it, we do that. And we've become pretty nimble with those. And it's, again, become part of the culture to say, we don't want to string anybody up. And I don't know that we've really fired anybody for, causing us to do a corrective action. Now, it's happened where people either are dishonest or they flat out repeatedly disregard our processes or our policies. But typically, we're just looking to find out, where did we fail you that enabled you to crash a machine, to make a bunch of bad parts?
Absolutely.
Sometimes if we lose a lot of money on a job, we'll do a corrective action on that to bring in all the parties that may come into play to learn from that. And sometimes a bad financial outcome turns into a big positive because, we're able to make some systemic change that hopefully in the future not only avoids it on that part, but other stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is just such an important principle to always bring it back to process. Like, where did the process fail that allowed this mistake to happen by you, right? It's not your fault that it happened. It's the process that failed you.
Yeah, we didn't train you. We didn't give you feedback that wasn't acceptable. It's important to take the person out of it. And people need dignity. They really do. And making it process oriented helps, definitely reinforces that.
Matt, we could talk for days, I think, but for the sake of everyone listening and getting back to their lives and their commutes or whatever, their time on the treadmill is about to be done. So I think maybe we'll hopefully we'll get enough feedback that they'll want you back again. But this has been incredibly insightful. I would just love to close with two things. What advice would you give to shops earlier in their journey? And then how can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about JD Machine?
Sure. And I thought of that question coming, and I would just recommend that you kind of consider what you want. If you enjoy making parts and the business side of it is a frustration or necessary evil, don't try to be huge. Unless you have resources and the ability to support that. There is nothing wrong with being a smaller shop. That is the bedrock of our industry, is shops that can be so efficient and produce such cool product that they are vital to everything that's going on. And if you do decide that you want to position yourself to become a bigger shop, make sure you invest in systems as early as possible. And I can be reached probably the best way is through LinkedIn. Matt Wardle, Wardle at JD Machine. Be happy to connect. I love to share best practices and learn from others. That's been a key part of my personal progression and our company's success. And initially, it really started at the NTMA at the conferences where I didn't know why I went, but I showed up. I was in my late 20s and got a couple of sage mentors that probably now are my age, but I had a question that I had about buying some equipment, and they give me advice that I don't know where I'd be without it. So feel free to reach out. And again, Paul, thanks for what you do for our industry. It's I don't miss an episode. I'm not sure I'm going to listen to my own, but it's been a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's a great way to wrap up. I love the advice, and definitely the shout out to NTMA and other industry organizations like that. They truly are such an incredible resource. Because I know there's like you said, you'd never worked anywhere else. I know I've only ever worked for two places, both my own companies, and it can be lonely. It can be difficult to be on an island and you're not really sure what other people do. So yeah, great advice to communicate and connect with other leaders, other owners, because I find more and more that the industry is just really open and we realize we're all in this together, and that rising tide does lift all boats. And if we can share and support each other, share best practices, share the challenges we've gone through, it'll just help make the industry better. And so thanks for doing your part today. I appreciate it.
It's been awesome. Thanks a lot, Paul.
All right. Take care, Matt.